Welcome to another episode of All Time Top. Now when it comes to time, the topic is absolutely enormous. I could make an entire video for each and everything I mention in this one, which may happen in the future, but for now let's keep it nice and broad and discuss time. Here is our list of the most interesting facts about time, so sit down, wind back the clock and prepare to be dazzled. At number 10 we have the names of the months. Now, most people know the story of Augustus and Julius Caesar having months named after them and being responsible for the names not lining up with the numbers they represent, i.e. September being the 9th month and October being the 10th. Well, this lovely little story isn't quite as true as it seems. When July and August were introduced, they replaced the months Quintilis and Sextilis, which were, at the time, the 7th and 8th months. It was in fact the introduction of Januaris and Februaris that threw the other months off, as the year used to begin in March on the first day of spring. January comes from the Roman word for door, as in the doorway to a new year, and February comes from the Roman word for purification, as early spring, late winter was the time for just that. March, April, May and June were named after gods. July and August were named after the two Caesars we mentioned earlier, and formally Quintilis through to December were named after numbers. Boy oh boy, that's a lot of information. At number 9 we have the 24-hour clock. Now 24 seems like such a random number. Why, you may ask, do we have 24 hours in a day and not, say, 10 or even 20? Well, for that we have the Egyptians to thank. You see, they divided their nights up into 12 sections and their days into 10 sections. They also had 2 sections in between connecting the night and day, i.e. hour, dusk and dawn. Spoiler alert, that makes 24. At number 8 we have the swinging 60s. Again, a strange number thing. We use base 10 for most of our measurements nowadays, so why do we still have our time in base 60? Well, for that we have another ancient civilization to thank, the Babylonians. You see, they kind of had a fetish, I guess, for the number 60. In fact, both 12 and 60 share the same property in that they have more divisors than any number smaller than themselves. This makes them incredibly efficient at segmenting time throughout the day, and it's most likely the main reason that this method has been passed down through the ages. At number 7 we have the first ever clocks. Now it's hard to say which of the ancient civilizations had the first clocks. Odds are they had developed similar clocks within the same approximate time period as archaeological discoveries find. Between 3000 and 1500 BCE, civilizations all over the world were inventing water clocks, shadow clocks, sundials and moquettes. Sundials are pretty self-explanatory. Water clocks would work in much the same way an egg timer does, i.e. water leaking from one bucket to another, measuring a fixed time when the bucket was full. Moquettes are a little less well known and measure time through the tracking of stars. Clever stuff. At number 6 we have the definition of a second. Now the official definition of a second is the duration of 9,192,631,770 periods of the radiation corresponding to the transition between the two hyperfine levels of the ground state of the cesium-133 atom. Which sounds complicated because it is. This is the most accurate, consistently reliable way of measuring a second, as the quantum activity of this particular atom is the same every single time. At number 5 we have the evolution of clocks. Now we went through how primitive clocks were first conceived of and invented, but as time went on they became even more impressive. The water clock of Aising, China was incredible. Built in the year 723 AD, this clock was water-powered but mechanical in nature. It was later changed to mercury as the water kept freezing and disrupting the timekeeping. Other notable inventions were the candle clock, hourglass and clock towers. Later on the pendulum clock was invented, revolutionizing timekeeping. Then the mechanical clock, then the quartz clock, which is often used in wristwatches, and last but not least we have the atomic clock. Incredibly accurate, incredibly expensive, and thought to lose just 1 second in every 100 million years. At number 4 we have time zones. So time zones are kind of a neat idea. I don't have to recalibrate my watch every time I go from London to Bristol to Cornwall, and that's pretty amazing. GMT was officially introduced in 1880, providing a standard time for every town and city in Great Britain. And over the next few decades, global time zones were introduced, providing standard time zones for most countries, with some of the larger ones having to use 2, 3 or even 7. My gosh, Russia. Bonus fact, China uses only a single time zone, even though its land spans over 5 time zone markers. At number 3 we have days of the week. Now, I could go into how the Roman and Greek astronomers borrowed the Babylonian tradition of naming planets after gods, which is essentially why the days of the week are named after planets, but I'll just leave the meaning behind each of our days up on the screen for you to pause, perhaps, and read through. Instead, I'll share with you the knowledge of the evolution of weekly cycles. The Greeks used roughly 3 10-day weeks, based on the lunar calendar, to divide up their months. The Romans used an 8-day cycle called the nunidal, or 9-day cycle. This is because the Romans counted inclusively, counting the first day again as they completed the cycle. Don't look at me, I didn't come up with this. Both of these were flawed in their own way, and when Emperor Constantine made Christianity the official state religion in the 4th century AD, the 7th-day week was officially adopted. Lovely stuff. At number 2 we have relativity. Now, relativity is a huge subject, so fitting the idea into a few sentences really won't do it justice. The basic concept is, time doesn't move at the same rate for everyone. It's relative depending on the speed you're moving at and your velocity. This is, technically, a form of time travel, allowing someone traveling at near the speed of light to travel much farther into the future than the years that they'd been traveling. This little bit of science was discovered by Albert Einstein and paved the way for decades of scientific progression and understanding. And at number 1 we have the Big Bang. The mighty boosh, the significant splosh, the great plop, these are all things that absolutely no one besides myself calls the Big Bang. It is the theorized beginning of, well, everything. It's a point we can trace back to in which the entire universe was condensed into the size of a pinhead. Now it gets a little tricky when you ask, well, what was before the Big Bang? You see, as far as we can tell, time itself started at the Big Bang, so you can't exactly have a before without any time. You see where this gets confusing? It is one of the most mind-boggling things in the universe and keeps great minds on their toes even to this day. So that's just about all we've got time for. Don't forget to comment on anything we missed or any subjects you'd like to see us do in future episodes, and hit those subscribe and bell icons to get our sweet, sweet nutritional videos delivered straight to your mailbox. I'll just remind you of one thing: if you'd like to save time, don't let your clocks talk. Ticks are cool, but it's the tucks that are killing us. This has been Connor from All Time Top, and I hope you have an amazing time.